68-year-old Margaret stood at the iron gates, her cardigan fluttering in the ocean breeze. Inside, 3 children screamed, "We'll make you quit like the others." But Margaret just smiled. She'd raised 7 grandchildren. These triplets didn't scare her. Margaret Carter adjusted her pearl necklace nervously as the Malibu mansion gates loomed before her. At 68, she hadn't planned on working again, not after retiring from teaching 3rd grade, but her daughter's medical bills left little choice. The ad had read, "Live in Nanny for triplets. Must tolerate high-energy environment." She'd expected toddlers, not the trio of wild-eyed preteens now pelting oranges from the balcony above. "Go away, old lady," shouted the tallest boy, his hair sticking up like a rooster's comb. "You'll quit by dinner." Margaret picked up a fallen orange, examining it like a prized specimen, hung bruised but still good for marmalade. She called out, her teacher voice cutting through their laughter. The triplets froze mid-throw. No one had ever responded like that. Inside, the staff eyed her thrift store purse and orthopedic shoes. "You read the new Nanny?" sneered the housekeeper, polishing a silver tray. "They've driven off 12 women in 2 months. Margaret simply set down her suitcase, a floral relic from the 90s, and pulled out a tin of homemade shortbread. "Would anyone care for a cookie?" The boys, now lurking at the staircase, snorted. "We don't eat grandma food." Margaret took a deliberate bite, crumbs dusting her blouse. "More for me then." The youngest triplet, Finn, inched closer, sniffing the air. "Smells like Mom used to make." The room fell silent. The housekeeper stiffened. Margaret's eyes softened. She extended the tin. "Would you like one, sweetheart?" Finn reached out just as his brother Max knocked the cookies to the floor. "Baby," he taunted. Margaret didn't flinch. She knelt, her knees popping audibly, and began gathering the broken pieces. "Waste of good shortbread," she touted. "But I've got ingredients for ginger snaps in my bag. Anyone want to help bake?" The boys exchanged glances. No one had asked them to help before, only to behave. Upstairs, billionaire widower Charles Hayes peered through his study blinds, watching the scene unfold. His usual scowl faltered. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't echo with screams. Just the soft clink of a spoon against a mixing bowl, and an old woman's off-key humming. The kitchen looked like a bakery exploded. Flour coated every surface, and Margaret's silver hair was now dusted white. The triplets Max, Leo, and Finn stood in a huddle, giggling behind floor-covered hands. "You look like a ghost," Leo crowed. Margaret wiped her glasses calmly. "Ghosts don't bake cookies," she said, reaching for the recipe card tucked in her apron. "What grandmas do. Grab those measuring cups, boys." The laughter died as the triplets realized she wasn't angry. Finn shuffled forward first, leaving powdery footprints. "Why aren't you yelling like the others?" Margaret measured flour with steady hands. "Because flour washes off. Hurt feelings take longer to heal." Upstairs, Charles listened. His office door cracked open. He heard every nanny before Margaret scream. At this point, her calm was unsettling. By afternoon, the flour was cleaned, and the scent of chocolate chip cookies filled the mansion. The housekeeper, Mrs. Potts, sneered as she passed. "You think snacks will tame them? They'll turn on you." Margaret simply slid a cookie onto a china plate. Hungry people act out. Loved people act right. At night, Charles found the plate outside his study, 3 perfect cookies, and a 4th, slightly burnt one labeled for the grown-up. He stared at it until the chocolate hardened. Downstairs, Margaret tucked the boys in. "Why do you care?" Max mumbled. Fighting sleep. She smoothed his hair, a gesture no one had done since his mother. "Because everyone deserves someone who shows up," she whispered, as she turned out the light. Finn caught her hand. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Her answer was simple. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." Margaret packed a picnic basket with the care of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Sandwiches cut into triangles, lemonade in a thermos, and oatmeal cookies wrapped in waxed paper. "Beach day," she announced, her sun hat flopping comically. The triplets groaned. "We hate the beach," Max said, crossing his arms. "Last Nanny quit after we buried her phone in the sand." Margaret just handed them each a shovel. "Then it's a good thing I don't own a smartphone." The Malibu neighbors gawked as the infamous Hayes hellions trailed behind the elderly woman, carrying buckets like ordinary children. When Leo threw a handful of seaweed, Margaret didn't scold. She wove it into a crown. "King of the ocean," she declared, placing it on his head. Finn, usually silent, giggled, a sound Charles hadn't heard since his wife's death. From his balcony, the billionaire watched, coffee forgotten. His boys were smiling. Really smiling. By afternoon, the triplets had built an elaborate sandcastle under Margaret's guidance. "We need a moat," Leo shouted, actually cooperating with his brothers. A snide voice cut through the moment. "Look at the circus act," sneered a neighbor. "Those brats will have her in the air by sundown." Margaret stood slowly, brushing sand from her knees. "Children mirror what they see," she said coolly. "Perhaps you should try showing them kindness." The crowd fell silent. Max stared at Margaret, then did something shocking. He stepped between her and the neighbor, his small face fierce. "Leave her alone." On the walk home, Finn slipped his hand into Margaret's. Charles saw it all from his window. That night, he found sand in his imported rug and didn't mind one bit. While teddying the playroom, Margaret discovered a dusty frame behind a stack of board games. The photo showed a radiant woman with the triplets as toddlers, all laughing in a pile of autumn leaves. The boys froze when they saw it. "That is Mommy," Finn whispered, his voice cracking. Margaret's wrinkled fingers traced the glass. "She had your smile, Leo." The room held its breath. No adult had spoken of their mother in years. Max snatched the frame. "Put it back. Dad says we can remember her." Margaret finished gently. She opened her wallet, revealing a faded picture of her late husband. Grief is love with nowhere to go. That night, Charles stormed into the kitchen, the photo in hand. "You had no right." Margaret turned from the stove, her apron dusted with flour. "They miss her." Pretending she didn't exist. "One tea changed that." Charles' anger faltered. "I just can't bear the questions." Margaret stirred the pot of chicken soup, his wife's recipe, found scribbled in a cookbook. "Sometimes the answers find us anyway." The aroma filled the mansion, stirring memories Charles had buried. Upstairs, the boys listened at the railing as their father did something unimaginable. He wept. Not in his study but at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Margaret said nothing, just placed a bowl before him, the steam curling like forgiveness. The next morning, the photo sat framed on the mantel, polished to a shine. The boys crowded around it, their usual chaos replaced by quiet reverence. "Tell us about her," Finn asked Margaret, and for the first time in years, Charles joined them, his voice rough but steady. "She loved the beach just like you." Margaret's eyes met his over the boys' heads. A silent understanding passed between them, not a replacement, but a bridge. The Christmas lights twinkled over the mansion's grand staircase, but the real glow came from the kitchen, where flour coated every surface. Margaret, now Grandma Meg to the boys, stood at the counter, rolling dough with Finn's small hands guiding hers. "Like this?" he asked, tongue peeking out in concentration. "Perfect," she murmured, her pearl necklace askew. Behind them, Leo and Max bickered over cookie cutters until Charles appeared, rolling up his sleeves. "Let me help." The boys gaped as their father, the man who'd once worked through every holiday, kneaded dough like he'd been doing it all his life. Later, as carols played, Charles handed Margaret an envelope. "Your official severance package," he said, eyes twinkling. Inside was an adoption petition. "The boys need you." "I need you." Margaret's hands trembled. "Charles, I am 68. And I am a fool who almost lost his family," he said softly. Outside, snow-dusted Malibu for the first time in decades, the triplets burst in, frosting smeared on their faces. "Did she say yes?" Finn demanded. Margaret looked at these people, her people, and smiled through tears. Wild horses. That spring, the local paper ran a story: Billionaire weds retired teacher in intimate ceremony. The photo showed not a lavish event, but a beach picnic with 3 beaming boys and 2 silver-haired figures holding hands, their laughter carried by the sea wind. And in the mansion that had once echoed with chaos, there was now a new tradition: Sunday baking with extra cookies for the staff. Even Mrs. Hotz, who'd finally stopped sneering. As Margaret often said, love doesn't divide. It multiplies, especially when measured in cups of sugar and decades of second chances.